Hi. I do hope that my readings from C.S. Lewis are helping you. They helped me so much in my early Christian walk, navigating after leaving a cult, the Witnesses. I had trust issues and a measure of paranoia, not wanting to be fooled again. So I found Lewis's openness and his frankness with his own objections and concerns when he was presented with what he felt were questionable arguments. So I'm going to continue to read from Fern-seed and Elephants, his essay, some of his concerns. Continued. He says, all this sort of criticism attempts to reconstruct the genesis of the text it studies. What vanished documents each author used, when and where he wrote, with what purposes, under what influences. This is done with immense erudition and great ingenuity. And at first sight, it is very convincing. I think I should be convinced by it, myself, but that I carry about with me a charm, the herb molly, against it. You must excuse me if I now speak for a while of myself. The value of what I say depends on its being first-hand evidence. What forearms one against all these reconstructions is the fact that I have seen it from the other end of the stick. I have watched reviewers reconstructing the genesis of my own books in just this way. Here I just wanted to say, as an ex-witness, I also have been on the other end of the stick. We have heard reconstructions of the history of why we left the Jehovah's Witnesses. Regularly, we hear. Lewis continues, until you come to be reviewed yourself, you would never believe how little of an ordinary review is taken up by criticism in the strict sense, by evaluation, praise, and censure of the book actually written. Most of it is taken up with imaginary histories of the process by which you wrote it. Then he talks about his friends. He says, since then I have watched with some similar, with care, some similar imaginary histories, both of my own books and of the books by friends whose real history I knew. Reviewers, both friendly and hostile, will dash you off such histories with great confidence, will tell you what public events had led or had directed the author's mind to this or that, what other authors had influenced him, what his overall intention was, what sort of audience he principally addressed, why and when, and when he did everything. Why and when he did everything. Now, I must first record my impression, then distinct from it, what I can say with certainty. My impression is that in the whole of my experience, not one of these guesses has on any one point been right, that the method shows a record of 100% failure. You would expect that by mere chance they would hit as often as they miss, but it is my impression that they do no such thing. I can't remember a single hit, but as I have not kept a careful record, my mere impression may be mistaken. What I think I can say with certainty is that they are usually wrong. And yet they would often sound, if you didn't know the truth, extremely convincing. So he's talking about his own experience with people saying how and why he came to conclusions in the way he wrote books, as well as his friends, other writers. Again, as an ex-witness, I can say that those that give these imaginary histories of the reasons why we left the witnesses state it with great confidence. Okay. I'll continue to read some points from Lewis. He says, "Now this surely ought to give us pause. The reconstruction of the history of a text, when the text is ancient, sounds very convincing. But one is, after all, sailing by dead reckoning. The results cannot be checked by fact. In order to decide how reliable the method is, what more could you ask for than to be shown an instance where the same method is at work and we have facts to check it by? Well, that is what I have done. And we find that when this check is available, the results are either always or nearly always wrong. The assured results of modern scholarship as to the way in which any old book was written are assured, we may conclude, only because the men who knew the facts are dead and can't blow the gaff. Again, in our case, what the org has done is simply to silence us, make us dead to other Jehovah's Witnesses. The org is also guilty of reconstruction of history, or making an imaginary history of its own history, its own religion. One only needs to read the original sources or the original source material, say Russell's books and Rutherford's books, and forward. You will discover very selective quoting, an airbrushed picture of events, and a wishful memory, or as Lewis said, an imaginary history. One can find scary parallels between George Orwell's nightmare world of 1984 and of God's organization, the Watchtower Society. I'm going to link, therefore, to 2 videos that we've done based on Orwell's writings and the parallels that we saw. One is called 15 Million Stolen Lives, Why We Publicly Expose JW.org. It was written when we were demonstrating at one of the conventions of witnesses. And the second one is my review of the book Animal Farm, also by George Orwell. So Orwell and Watchtower history. Till next time.